Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Sonic Builders Hour. This one's quite going to be quite interesting because Billy is going to be showing us how to fork Aave and some interesting stuff around that. I think most of our team and a lot of our ecosystem people are in New York right now for the conference. I think that it'll be a really interesting time for those who are tuning in now, but also we'll share this afterwards as well, so that people in New York can catch up later. I'm just going to let Louise know to retweet us, and then we can get started. How have you been, Billy?
I'm good. I'm good. It's crazy. This is kind of like conference time, right? We had permissionless, and then I think as crazy as it sounds, they're still having NFT NYC like a couple days later, and then we have ECC next week. So I'll be traveling at the end of this week to head over there. So that'll be interesting. France is going wild right now, so pretty crazy.
Yeah, the two.
Yeah,
I mean, the world's going wild right now. It's
yeah,
quite a
yeah.
crazy time. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like lucky to be sheltered right now, or like sort of not in those places. But yeah, hopefully things resolve. Major instability right now. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know
So
what is stable? API 3 oracles.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So awesome. So I think most of you guys tuned in for the previous episodes. Hopefully, who are watching this, because if you are, then you're probably interested in what Billy has to offer. So I think that today's is going to be super interesting for everyone, because again, we're forking Aave. So what I'll do now is hand it over to Billy to maybe do a quick intro for those who are new, and then take it away.
Sure, for sure. Thank you, Seg. Yeah, for those that are catching this video for the first time, I am Billy Jitsu on Twitter, or X. I keep mixing those up from time to time. X, Twitter. You know, I sound like those moms that call like all gaming systems Nintendo, you know, when I call it Twitter. But yeah, so anyway, I'm the dev relations for API 3. I am doing this like kind of like a longer series workshop. I don't think anybody's actually doing this kind of series where I'm taking you step by step in becoming a beginner searcher. So understanding how oracles work, and I'll cover this in the slideshow, but just in case you're catching it right now, you'll have a little bit of catch up to do, because every workshop that comes out is based off the previous workshop. So there's a little snippet of information for you to learn and then use that in the next workshop. So if this is your first one, it's totally fine that you're catching up here, but make sure to come back and then catch the previous workshops. But let me go ahead and share my screen, and then we can kind of get into the nitty gritty here. So as it loads up,
I'm just gonna drop off, and then I'll pop in for questions and clarification.
for sure. Again, we are API 3 oracles that pay you. How does that make sense? It'll all come together as we talk about OEV. So again, I am your developer support. If you have any questions about API 3 oracles or the workshops or how OEV works, I'm the guy to talk to. This is the QR code for X, and then my Telegram is also Billy Jitsu as well. If I am in a development group, make sure to tag me, because my Telegram just is crazy, right? So I'll get to you for sure. So just to recap where we're at right now, the first workshop was like the fundamentals of API 3, how to get a price feed to your smart contract, or what does that all mean. We got that done in like 10 minutes, right? And that's great. But let's say you have some code that you are forking from another place and you want to bring it to Sonic, right? And they don't have the feed that you need. You can use an adapter, or you can use an already existing system that works. Like if you're using like Chainlink oracles, all you have to do is just switch the proxy feed and you're good. So we showed you how to do all that within the hour. Second workshop is Oracle extractable value. Like what makes API 3 different than all the other oracles? Like how do push and pull oracles work? How does API 3 pay you as a DApp on there? We kind of covered about like what the bidding system is, how to get the most exact price feed at the exact time when it really matters, and how that benefits you as a searcher. So that was the second workshop. Third workshop, we're breaking this into 3 pieces. Third workshops, we're going to deploy Aave, right? So we're going to learn how to actually deploy Aave with the CLI tool that we built. And then in the second workshop, we're going to learn a little bit more about the naming of everything. What is collateral? What is all this, information about debt, liquidations? We're going to perform a liquidation on there with a bad position. We're going to do that with an EOA wallet. And it's only one function that we have to call. Liquidations can seem mysterious, but it's literally one function that we call when the time is right. And then the third workshop is that's great, but everybody's going to compete for it, right? So this is how OEV shows that it's powerful on a layer 2 specifically, because you cannot theoretically bribe a sequencer. So how do you get advantage? You use the OEV network, and then you run your liquidations because you have the rights to update the Oracle. And then the fourth workshop is that's all great, Billy, but I don't have millions of dollars in my wallet just sitting around ready to do liquidations when you have chaos like it was like 2 days ago, right? All these things were liquidating. So flash loans, borrow the money for a block and then do all your magic and then walk away with the profits, right? It is a low risk because if it doesn't walk away with profit and you can't pay back the loan, the whole transaction reverts and you're not out any money other than gas. Right. So then understanding how to use a flash loan, we're going to use Tenderly. We're going to fork mainnet, show you how to, fork that and then do it whatever specific block and then show you how that works. So you're going to be learning how to use Tenderly on that. And then we're going to put it all together, right? We're going to basically find a liquidation position. We're going to use a flash loan to borrow the money. We're going to use OEV to do the bid, and then we're going to win and profit. And then you have now become a beginner searcher where when these, markets get chaotic, there is money to be made. Boom. So today we are going to do deploy your own Aave fork with Api3's CLI tool. So Aave is kind of interesting. And so it is a little bit dated when you look at the code, but it all functions, right? We have plenty of functioning things that work in the Aave space on there. So we are going to be using it with Docker to deploy it. But here's the workshop breakdown here, right? You're going to learn how borrow lending works, right? What is over collateralized loan values, right? How come we don't do under collateral? Because there's no reason to pay it back, right? Like a credit card. I could just go default and make a new wallet and start fresh, right? How does a platform stay healthy? Like, right, when Aave has borrow lending dApps, like how does it not have bad debt, right? And then understanding the fork deployment, right? So here's where you kind of need workshop 1 is learning you to use API3 adapters for the legacy code, right? We're using this other code base that used a different Oracle, and now it needs to use our Oracles. So we're going to look into the adapters, and that's something we covered in workshop 1 that I'm just going to breeze over in this workshop. And then we're going to position ourselves. We're going to deposit a position, and we're going to borrow some money. So what is a borrow lending dApp for those that have no idea what that is? It's basically like a bank, right? So this enables us as individuals to deposit our assets and earn some yield. Like if you've ever deposit in like a savings or like a high yield banking system, they lock your funds up for maybe a year or 3 years, and they give you a small return because they lend it out, right? All what we do now is we have the ability to do ourselves without having a major lockup, right? So by having our deposits, then therefore Aave can then lend out those assets for someone to borrow, and they pay a fee, right? In order for us to borrow assets in the crypto space, we have to deposit something of value that is worth more than what we are borrowing, right? That's called over collateralization. So if I have, let's say, $10,000 worth of ETH, I can borrow up to maybe $7,000 of USDC, because if I borrow 11 or something more, what is the reason for me to pay it back? I could just close the account, cash out, and then like peace, right? It's very anonymous in the space, so that's what we do. So yeah, the borrowing rate is higher than the lending rate, so that's where the yield comes from, right? So if I deposit some ETH, or let's just say USDC, you'll see the most rates right now are between 3 and 5% on like some kind of interest rate that you get for depositing. And if you look at the borrow rates, they're about 7 to 8% on average. So there's about a 2-3% difference in the what deposits are getting and what lenders are paying. So the lenders are obviously earning yield from the people that are borrowing, and then the bank makes a little bit in between, right? So there's a good market happening here that pays itself. We're not making magic money out of anywhere, right? So it's a very good, theoretically good business system if you have a nice ecosystem of people depositing assets to lend out and many people borrowing. So how does a platform know how much to lend, right? This is where oracles are very, very dependent on the dApp. We've seen so many hacks, so many accidents, so many things happen with this because what is the price of ETH to adapt, right? It does not know what the actual USD value or the euro value is of ETH. It just knows ETH is ETH, right? Like 0.1 ETH. What is that value? And Oracle gives you that information. It's like, oh, currently ETH is what 2,400 right now to USD. So 1 ETH is worth 2,400, right? So the average loan, and this is all depending on, whether the Aave DAO does it, or maybe, Compound, or if you have your own borrow lending DApp, how much are you willing to lend out based off the original value? How risky is it? How much liquidity is on the chain? So average loan for ETH is about 70% of your total value, right? So that's, kind of what it is. Different assets have different risks, right? Rat BTC, ETH, those are all established blue chip, tokens. You'll see that on almost every market. But what if you want to go a little bit more exotic? Maybe there's this new token that is, gaining traction, like ENA or something like that, and you want to borrow off that. Well, do you still want to borrow 70%? That's something that you have to decide yourself. Maybe we don't. Maybe we only want to do like 60% on that because it's a little bit more risky, right? We don't want to lend out too many assets because it, might cause some problems for our bank. So we decide that on there. So our average loan to value, those are LTVs. So your health factor determines the health of your position, right? Your loan to value, how much have you deposited, how much have you borrowed, and how much can you borrow, all determines your health factor, right? So Aave measures ETH against certain values. So you must use conversions for USD calculations, right? So you have to make sure that Aave or Compound or, Silo Finance, right? That's on Sonic. Though they all have their different measures of how they do, but most of the time you'll see like a loan to value type of network that determines your health. So let me make sure here. We're going to look at the structure of our contracts, right? If you look at the Aave contract base, it is like monstrous, right? You go from here's an Oracle, and here's like this one pager of smart contracts. And it's all right, cool, you're an expert now. Here's like a 36 contract kind of thing, right? There's no in between of like, something basic and something that gets you into. But when you look at it and you break it down, you can kind of see a flow of it. This is from the Aave docs on V2. And you'll notice that everything kind of structures around the lending pool. Lending pool contract is basically the contract that we as users interact with. And you'll see all the different functions from there. You'll have the deposit function, withdraw function, borrow, repay, right? For any borrow lending DApp. It also has a few other things, but most importantly, it has a flash loan and it has liquidate. So as anytime we do anything kind of user base, we're always going to be working or interacting with the lending pool contract. Now there's more mechanics behind it, right? They have these asset appreciating things for DAI and USDC. So as you deposit your USDC, you're going to see something that you get A tokens, you'll get A USDC. Those are credits to show how much you have deposited and how much yield you're earning from the time you're doing it. And then you have these debt tokens, right? Like if you borrow something, you have these, immovable things from your wallet. That's your debt, right? So that way you can't, mess with the system. The beauty of it is you can move these around so you can generate more markets off borrow lending dApps, right? So if I have this yield earning asset here, USDC, and then there's another market for it, then I can deposit that somewhere else and then put that at risk again, but I can earn more yield. And that's the beauty of DeFi in the space, right? You're not limited to one specific thing. If you have this asset that is earning yield and there's a market for it, you can even earn even more yield on it. And that's why I'm such a DeFi head, because of, hey, how can I maximize my yield without getting too crazy, right? But they all revolve around the lending pool. And then there's other thends that happens in the back ends too, right? The Oracle's proxy, that helps me borrow, connect to the lending pool to say, oh, how much can I actually borrow based on my deposit, right? It's going to look at the oracles. It's going to look at the lending rate oracles. Like, is it 70%? Is it 60%, 65%, 85%? That is up to you as the owner of the dApp, or if you're a DAO, you get to choose what it is. And then you have all these configurations on there. So all these different moving parts and these contracts all have a purpose, but at the end of the day, the only one that you're really interacting with as a user is the lending pool. Okay, so key factors for the CLI tool, right? So the original fork uses a different Oracle. We're using API3 adapters. So originally it was using, I think, Chainlink V2. And so we created adapters like we did in the first one in order for it to work with API3. Our latest update with API3 oracles is it works right out the door. It's actually compatible with the V3 interface. So if you are forking a V3 interface one, you don't have to do anything special with the adapter. You could just change the Oracle to API3 oracles and it will work. Right? Asset values are represented in terms of ETH or the native token. So the conversions happen at an app level. There's a lot of extra space in the when we do work with 18 decimals, and you do like millions of dollars and you start dividing and doing things, decimals tend to get lost, right? So I know we covered that in the first workshop of normalization. Some people add, extra decimals, so when they do the mathematical calculations, you don't get wrecked when you're doing withdrawals. A lot of hacks have happened that, so people tend to scale up on certain assets when they do calculations and rewards, to make sure that we don't lose any decimals when we bring it back down to 18 decimals. So it's one of those things that can get confusing when you're looking at the large numbers. And then most ERC20 tokens are 18 decimals, but USDC, USDT, those are 6 decimals, right? So we are burdened with the fact that not every token has the same amount of decimals. So there is a decimal check-in to make sure that everything is accounted for. You can add any token as a collateral as long as there's a price feed for it. So because we're doing this on testnet, we can start adding any token. If you go to the market.api3.org and see a price feed for it, you can lend it out theoretically. It is at your risk that you want to do. This is great for hackathons or anything that you want to fork this for and then use it as you need. And then to deploy the Aave contracts, you're going to need a private RPC endpoint. Sonic didn't really have one, but the public one works well. What you're worried about is that we're deploying about 36 different contracts, so you don't want to get rate limited. I've already been a good, live feeder, so like I've already deployed it to make sure that it works. But in essence, anytime you want to have anything when you're deploying stuff back to back to back, you want to have a private RPC for a better experience. You should be using a private RPC for like your wallet anyway, because it's just a better experience. So get one. It doesn't matter from where. QuickNode, Alchemy, Infura, DD Cloud is coming out with one too. So like plenty of options to choose from that are pretty affordable. And then at the end, you're going to need to use Docker to deploy the Aave contracts. And you don't have to know any Docker. All the files are already there. The problem is it uses an older version of Node. We're using older versions of Solidity. I think it's like Solidity 6. So, it's instead of having any problems, we just Docker contain it. And that way, everything is working out of the box. And then here is the link to the example. I'm actually going to put this in the private chat as well, so we can share it out for any of those watching it on YouTube and all that. And it's pretty chill, step by step on there to get things up and running. And enough chatter. Let's get to building some cool stuff, and let's break it down. Cool. All right. So, oh no, hold on. My WSL is just crashed, so that is fun and exciting. So let me load this again, and hopefully this actually works. So we're waiting for that to load up. Let's take a quick look at this GitHub repo. Has a lot of stuff on here. You'll notice that it has its API3 adapters, API3 liquidations. This is pretty much the thing that we're going to be working on the entire time. So it's going to be overwhelming at first, and we're going to work on this over and over and over again. So don't worry. It kind of takes you step by step on the very, very first part. So we have this Aave protocol with V2DP APIs. Basically, we're going to take you step by step, basically follow the example of what you want to do. And then, I'm going to take you step by step of each step that you need to do. And we're going to stop it about right here to get that all up and running. So like, this is why I broke it up into different pieces. And I see that my Linux system just crashed. So hooray for me. This sucks. I'm going to do this without, I'll do this on a regular Windows one, and then let's just see how it goes. There is a small problem on the front end portion, but we'll cover it in a second. So I'm going to go ahead and just clone a repository. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this one and understand why my Linux distribution has officially crashed. So let's go ahead and pop that in, and I'm going to put it in one of my folders right here. I'm just going to clone, and let's go ahead and open it. And cool. All right. So let's go ahead and take it from the top. and we'll cover it in here in just a second, but I have to pop in my .env, so let me just pull that over really quick. Can I get that from my other one? Let me see if I can pull this out really quickly. Hopefully I can. Actually, let me do this really quick and see if I can open up another WSL distro. Into, and let's see. If not, the show will go on. I'll just kind of like take it to the side and grab a .env manually and do it. But hopefully I don't have to.
Live tech demo woes.
Yeah, that's what happened. But
you, I mean, very few hitches so far. So it's really,
yeah,
really
yeah,
awesome.
I'll make it work here. One
Nice.
way or the other, we're gonna force it to work. But anyways, as it's loading on the side, I'll just let it chill for a second. I'm gonna grab a couple WSL, but let's go ahead and go through the whole demo here. As I'm pulling something on the side, I won't be able to deploy until I grab that .env file. But let me get in here. So let's go ahead and go down through here. And so for, again, like I mentioned before, we're going to have to use Docker. There's a link to Docker. Here's the link to Docker Compose. If you download the latest Docker, it'll have Docker Compose already in there. If you're using WSL, it will have the latest Docker codes in there. If you are using Windows, like I'm using right now for the demo purposes, the issue is in the front end, where I kind of pull in the front end to generate code. It gives me some issues on there. So I just tend to use Docker in a Linux base, and it has no issues on there. So it's this weird Windows issue that causes it. So that's why I wanted to use that on there. But what we're going to do is we're going to go over to the API3 adapters and then get that up and running. So we're going to go ahead and just CD to API3 adapters, and we're going to go ahead and download the tool. So yarn install. And it looks like that whole WSL distribution is like dead. So let me see what else I can do here to grab this code. Okay, perfect. All right. And so now that we are on the adapters, we're going to go ahead and look at the tokens here. So let's go into the adapters folder and break this down. So you'll notice that this is a totally different thing that's not in Aave's system. It has a bunch of different contracts on here. That's a little bit scary for you, but this is what's happening right here. We have this ERC20 token that we're going to do. We're creating our market for what we're going to have for our deposits, what we're going to have for the our borrow lending system, right? And then we're going to use an adapter. If you remember from workshop 1, we created this adapter that we wanted to do to be able to use API3 oracles with Chainlink oracles or Redstone oracles or any other oracles. So we mimic, the same function calls like latest answer. We match the decimals because we want decimals 8 because that's what Chainlink has. So we're basically creating these adapters that read API3 oracles and then convert them into Chainlink, compatible oracles. Again, this was built before we have compatibility. Now it's like one-to-one compatibility, so you don't really have to use it, but we have it here. And then the same thing for the USDC oracle on here. Again, this one is 6 decimals, so we have to take that into consideration, that one with 18 decimals needs a certain adapter, another one with 6 decimals needs a certain adapter in here. And then I have this mock wrapped ETH, and then all these other ones here, this USDC. I just have this mintable USDC. So like if you want to run simulations where you just want to keep spamming that, USDC, printing it out, and you keep wanting to do liquidations, you could, if you wanted to keep fauceting in and get a couple million tokens. But that's all the contracts are, right? Like we just generically make these stock contracts. But the real big bread and butter here is the configuration here. This is how we set up our tokens and our base units, right? So if I'm looking at here, I'm going to see the 2 assets that I have here is this wrap Bitcoin and this mock API3, and then this ETH USDC proxy, which is the native gas token, and the USDC proxy, right? Because we want to get all our prices in whatever the token is -USD, right? So we need the USDC address and the USD. And then we're going to go ahead and set up our forks and everything here. So let me go ahead and open this up. And let's go ahead and go to the market because we want to deploy this to Sonic testnet. So I'm going to go to market.api3 and we're going to go to testnet and we're going to go to Sonic. and we want to get some feeds. Right, so let's go ahead, and I've already pre-purchased a few of these feeds. So I'm just going to grab API3's feed. Again, we're not using OEV, we're just using the generic proxy for here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that and go into API3. And this is just called mock API3, but I'm going to do that feed for Sonic. And then let's see, what else do we have here? And I had this prepped on the other repo, but because it's crashed, I'm going to do this manually. We're going to grab the ETH one. And then I'm going to do that in here. So for this case, especially on Sonic, ETH is not the gas token, right? So it is Sonic or S on here. So it would not be here. We're actually going to make a wrapped ETH on here. So let's go ahead and actually I'm going to copy and paste this layout here and make it into a wrapped ETH here. So we're going to do wrapped ETH. And my mouse will not play ball here. And then wrapped ETH. And this is the only reason I'm doing this. I'm creating this token on the market for me. Then I'm going to grab this proxy and pop it here. And that's how I add a token, right? If I wanted to make seg token and I had a feed for it, I would just literally create the token on the fly. And then let's go back. And then we're going to grab S token. We're going to create that. So let me go ahead and do that. Pop it over here. And so that would be the place of the E token, because this is the gas token. This is the base token on here. And then I want to do wrap Bitcoin and I want to do USDC. So let's go back. I think I have USDC live here. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to do the USDC. Cool. And then do we want to do wrap BTC? No, it's going to take too long. I haven't like bought it yet, but you know what? Let's just do it. Why not? Wrap BTC USD. I want a 1% deviation. It's super cheap to get it, so I'm just going to go ahead and buy it. Confirm. And it's that easy. Boom. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and integrate it and grab it. And then cool. Okay, and so now this is where it gets kind of detailed. We're going to have to use the Sonic testnet, testnet RPC. And we're going to go to Blaze. I just use chain list on here just in case. And then Sonic Blaze. So I want to have this chain ID. And this is important to do because a lot of this script runs off here. So, and then I'm going to do Sonic testnet. And this is where your private RPC would go. But for our case, I'm going to use the Sonic Blaze. This one, right? I believe. And I tell you, I had this all saved. So I was just going to copy and paste that down. And then this is going to be Sonic. And then S and wrapped S. And wrapped S. Cool. And then this is not super important. I'm just going to leave it blank here for right now. All right, perfect. So we have this thing that we are ready to deploy our market. We are going to be listing wrapped Bitcoin, wrapped ETH, mock API3, and then S Sonic token on here as well. Actually, we should just do a wrap Sonic token too. That way it looks pretty clear. Let me put that on the list here. It's Sonic, obviously. So I wrapped S. And then S. And let me grab that Sonic feed, which is this one right here. And that way you know how to create a market. Okay, so we are ready to deploy. Let me put this to the side and just check a .env file here just to make sure that I have this correct. Otherwise, I'm going to have to like dig into like some stuff here. So bear with me just a second. Cool. And I hope that is correct. So back to the GitHub file. Let me see, where is that? There we go. we've basically did the adapters, we've installed the packages, we've created all our tokens, and we added everything we needed to add here. I have my mnemonic here. So if we look at the .env example, I just have this mnemonic phrase. Why do we use a mnemonic instead of a private key on this one? It's because I'm creating these scenarios where I have one wallet deposit, another wallet liquidate. Maybe I wanted to run a scenario where I have 5 wallets deposit and 1 wallet liquidate. Instead of having 5 private keys and do anything, I'm using one mnemonic and I'm generating the wallets on the fly, right? So I can go back and forth. So that's the reason why I chose the mnemonic. And so now we're just going to go ahead and yarn deploy the adapters. That's going to deploy our adapters for each one of these configurations here. So let's go ahead and yarn deploy adapters. And that hopefully with my .env is correct that I copied here. It's going to compile and then we'll start deploying them all on S. It's pretty quick. And there we go. Actually, I'll make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to go geriatric on here just so you guys can see it. So it takes a little while, but basically everything, it creates a wrapper and adapter for each one of these. So then it can be used already for our token. As we actually deploy these tokens and these adapters, the tokens are being minted to our deployer wallet. So we have all these, millions of tokens in our initial wallet to begin with on here. And we just sit in awkward silence as we deploy here. Sometimes when I'm deploying, I'll get like coffee or, or some kind of food.
What if you could speed up real life?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. In the perfect world, I had this one ready to rock, and we're like how they cook a cake,
Yeah.
and said, okay, bake it for 15 minutes, but it's like, we already have one right here. Well, that's what I had until it crashed. So,
Oh, damn.
all right, so that one's been completed. I'm going to try to at least see if I can load this up again, maybe this Linux system, or if someone in the audience knows how to like restart us up Linux without restarting the computer. But anyways, we have deployed, and then you'll see that I have this references.json. Right here is going to tell us everything that we have deployed. Right, it's going to say here's your wrap BTC, here's your wrapped ETH, here is the token address which has already been minted, here's the adapter, right? And so when we deploy Aave, it's going to use this references JSON file to pull everything we need to get up here. Ignore this mock proxy and OEV stuff. It's something that we're going to use later. Right now we're using real oracles on a real testnet because I want to do a liquidation with you in the future. I don't have the power to change an oracle, right? So we're going to make our own mock oracles and make that work. So this is all you need for this. So we have this references, so you know it's a successful deployment. Okay, let's get into deploying Aave, right? We've just been deploying like adapters and whatnot here. So let's go into the markets configuration. So we're going to go back into the root of the directory. So right now, if you've just been following along, it's just going to be right here. So we're just going to go right back into the root, cd back. And so now this is where we have to like load up Docker. And so, oh, my Docker hasn't been loaded up. I closed it. So I have my Docker ready to set up. Again, you don't have to do anything specific here to make this work. And kind of curious to see where my Docker went to when I closed it. Let's go ahead and just run it. Or is this just a total failure right now? Let me look at my Docker. I'm actually just looking at like my files here to make sure Docker didn't like crash with this whole WSL issue.
Barack from Access just switched to Linux proper.
Well, I like to game, so like randomly I do like to game, yeah, and so
I
yeah.
feel you.
But yeah, I feel you right now, so I get it. I can't even hate on it right now because I'm dying here, but we'll see. And actually, I wonder if I can kill all these WSLs. Close. Okay, cool. So let me end that task, and actually this might work, but let's see. All right, let me just try to open up my Docker again and see if that loads up. Yay. All right, cool. And so Docker is going to start up and do its thing. I'm curious if my WSL will actually work now. Nah, okay, it's all crashed. Oh no. Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna give it another shot. If not, I'm gonna restart. If that's not like super horrible
And
for
if
you
not,
guys.
we can talk about monitoring the situation.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see if my Docker engine will work. Load it up, my amigo. Load it up. And no. All right. Cool. All right. So this is an absolute horrible situation here. I got to reboot. Give me like can you entertain for like 3-4
Yeah,
minutes? Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
There's I'll share Polymarket because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in
Perfect.
Polymarket.
Okay. I will be back. I will join the stream in just a little bit. I just got to reboot. This is just going to be way easier to do it this way. All right. I shall return.
Sounds good.
All right.
Hey guys, let's monitor the situation while he comes back. So it seems like Polymarket is placing. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to talk politics on stream. So yeah, I think most of our team right now is at in New York, and if you don't know, if you're watching the stream, Sonic got listed on Coinbase literally as we were starting our event in New York, which is amazing. And so yeah, like news roundup, Coinbase, Sonic events, Sonic Summit coming in a little while. Not gonna, I don't know what's been announced and what's not, so I'm not gonna spill any beans there. But super cool progress we're making chain wise, and I think dev wise, VM adoption is going up. So for the devs that are tuning in, the metrics are still positive, even though market's depressed. And we actually have a Dune dashboard for any devs who want to see the actual metrics live. So it's on the Sonic Labs Dune page. You can check that out. But yeah, I think things are going super well for Sonic right now, and our team's like vast majority of our team is just hosting the event in New York right now. So if you're in New York, make sure to attend. I think it's happening either right now or in like an hour or so. So if you're there, make sure you go check out the Sonic event. And I think that hopefully the broader market conditions are going to now sort of get better with this potential reduction in instability potential. Who knows what really happens? Let's see. What else do we got that's new? We have. Let's see. Kaito stuff. So assistant is number one on in Yaps, I think, which is pretty cool. I'm just browsing the news to sort of deliver it to you guys. We have some cool student group stuff going on as well for those who don't know. So we have Bitsquela, who's leading Philippine efforts for Sonic adoption. And then we have Louise, who's spearheading our university program. So universities across the US are sort of having student groups participate in the Sonic ecosystem, which is really, I think, really cool. There's interesting political news again. I don't want to breach that, but I feel like a Mario Nelfel podcast right now. Let's see what else. Derp, um, derp stuff. What else? That's just got listed on Coinbase. Oh, Billy's back. All right, let me put Billy on. Hey Billy, what's up?
What's up? I'm still rebooting. It's literally circling as we're going, but I have returned
Sounds
on
good.
a
I just
reboot. Yeah,
activated stereo no fault mode.
there you go.
Yeah,
All right, so let me get this Docker engine up and running. It's
sounds
still
good.
spinning here, but I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. This is what happens in the real life, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Versus have it like a video scripted or something.
yeah,
I do it
yeah.
live. Everything I do is live.
That's good. I mean,
Yeah,
that's yeah. You take the good with the bad when it's live.
yeah, yeah. So
Nice.
you'll see that my Docker engine is slowly rebooting up. It's because why I want to prep. I don't know why the Linux crashed. I know there was like an update last week and it was acting a little funky, but I was like, oh, let me just restart my machine in the beginning just to make sure it's cool, and then you can see. So
Nice.
something. Oh no, the Docker engine has stopped. Let me try it again here. One second. I think that my WSL just busted. This is horrible.
Did
Let
you
me
see
see.
Billy S got listed on Coinbase yesterday?
Oh, it did? Nice.
Yeah, yeah. It's been years in the making. So
Yeah.
pretty
That's
cool
from the
timing.
phantom days.
Yeah, yeah,
Let me
yeah.
see. Come on, Docker. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Boom. Now my Docker's up and running.
Nice.
Cool. All right. So yeah, there we go. It's all my containers from the back in the day. All right. Cool. Let me go here, CLI demo, and hopefully this does not crash on me what yet again. But okay, so where are we? Where are we? Docker Compose up. Now this is going to take a while because I have not loaded it before. So we're going to go ahead and pop in the Docker Compose up. All the Docker files are already in the repo here. So it's just going to read this, and I'm going to have this container up and running in the back end here. You see how I have this Aave CLI demo started a second ago. You'll see some previous ones. It's going to load everything in this image and prepare everything to jump. For those that are actually having a WSL that works, make sure that you go into your settings, and when you go to resources, WSL integration, you make sure you add your resources in here as well. Otherwise, you won't be able to communicate with your Docker on there. If you're using a Mac or you're using a proper Linux system like everybody else besides me, you don't have to worry about such things, but I do. So there you go. That way you have this up and running. And so we're just going to wait for this thing to load up as it goes and continues to prepare. Sometimes it tricks me and it says like it's ready, but it takes a little while for it to go. And so as we are going up there, again, you don't need to do anything specific with the Docker. You just need to just have it installed. The latest version has mostly everything you need on there. So we just have to get that composition up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open a terminal on here that's going to basically put our contracts, our .env file on the actual distro. And then we're actually going to do the full deployment on here. So I'm going to wait a little bit. If we do it too early, and I'll show you what happens when we do it too early, we're going to keep this up and running. But you'll see that it's still going on here. We're getting a couple warnings that things are deprecated because this is Aave v2. So some things are not there. So that's why we have it containered. But if I do it too early, it's going to look like everything's ready to go. And then when I actually do the migration, it's going to give me a failure. And then I'm going to look dumb because it's going to, hey, this should have happened. So if I do this right now and I run the migration, it's probably going to give me all these different errors on here. So you just have to make sure that when you do it, this is complete. And like it gets stuck on this for the longest for whatever reason, and then it just shoots through and comes in. So that happens on both Linux, Apple, and everything. We just have to wait it out for it to actually build a container. I'm not doing anything special on the Docker. I'm just literally waiting for it to just complete, and it's kind of just doing its thing right here. So it's just using my CPU like crazy on here. So we just kind of have to wait a little bit. I'm going to close this section off in just a second, and then just kind of wait for this to go. And I know we're kind of coming close to the hour on here. So what I'm going to do is once we get to the deployment on here, I'm going to see if the front end works. If not, I'll cut it there, and then we'll start where the front end is on the next workshop on there. Because it is a complete package. It is the Aave contracts, and the front end comes in, which is actually an easy one to use, but just on time. I wasn't expecting to restart and have to do everything all manually. So
No, it's all good. I mean,
yeah,
we have future sessions we can
yeah,
sort of explore this
yeah,
in. So that works. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm gonna wait for this. This takes a little while. This is the bane of this .env file. At least I think it is. I'm waiting. I'm waiting. Yeah, it's doing something. It's pushing my CPU a little bit more. We shall see what my container goes. But anyway, I'm going to give it a shot anyway as we are looking at it. This is, you don't really have to understand too much. There we go. It started moving again. There we go. See, every time I think it's done, it's not done. All right. So as we prepare that, you'll see that we have this Docker Compose contract CMV batch. So we're going to make sure that we have another window while this is up and running. There we go. And so I'm going to go ahead and paste that. Puts us in a terminal mode, right? It passes our .env files and everything, and it gets ready for our Etherscan key. And so then we're going to run the command, the Aave custom full migration. Because why is it custom? Because we have our own oracles that we're going to be using, not the ones they set in the deployment script. So we're not using the Aave deployment script. We're using our deployment script because we have our adapters. We're using API3 adapters. We're customizing our own tokens. And so we're just going to call this function here. And it's going to use our same .env file on here. And we're just going to go ahead and run that. And here we go. We start deploying like 36 different contracts step by step. If you want to watch it and move it along, you can. And you'll see that it's going to start looking at all the references from my API3 adapter. It's going to download the compiler for Solidity versions. So it's going to get it all prepped in this image. And once this is done, you've kind of successfully deployed the Aave contracts. While this is working and while this is going in the background, because this does take a little bit of time on here, I'm going to try my luck on that WSL here and see if that does work and see if it is able to connect. And yes, it did. Perfect. Okay, so this is kind of cooking in the background right here. You'll see that on here, it's just getting ready for all the warnings and whatnot, and then deployments. Let's just take a quick look at what I did previously with cooking beforehand on here, so we can actually do the Aave UI. So on this one, I only did wrapped ETH and mock API 3, and then testnet based on here, and that's on the adapters. Once everything has been deployed, like all this has been deployed out from here, there will be a file called deployed contracts. Let me make this bigger. In your root file, this has all the contracts that it deployed for that specific instance. So you're going to have your lending pool address provider, which is a very important contract for you to have, but you're going to see all the different ones. This is the lending pool one. This is the one that we interact with our deposit, withdraw, liquidate. This is the most important contract on here. And then all the different contracts that make this work, A token contracts, delegations, debt tokens, all these different ones that happen on here. So this is basically Aave, all deployments, and this is the reference file. From every script and every tutorial that we do from here on out, I'm going to be referencing this. If you look at the scripts here, you're going to see I have a whole bunch of scripts on here. You'll see that I have flash loan scripts. These are things to help you, adjust the Oracle. You are the owner of the Oracle. You are basically the DAO. You can change everything that you want on there to your needs, to whatever you may want to have. And then, that all references these files, and then this one here on the adapter, right? So we know this is where the tokens are, right? The references. We know these are where the tokens are. This is where my faucet is for USDC. And then all the Aave references will be on the deployed contract addresses that are here, right? Once we have that all set and it's been all deployed, and this again does take some time. You'll see that is deploying the Aave Oracle files, and we can see it on the background as it's going. Let's go ahead and redo the front end. So I'm going to go ahead and just minimize the front end. So we have this Aave 3 UI. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that permanently. Since we got a little bit of time on there, might as well, since I got this working. We're going to go on there and we have deployed all the contracts, right? We're not doing anything special. We're just letting the RPC and our gas tokens just do the deployments. So we are ready to spin up the front end, which is what I wanted to get to. And that's kind of where we're going to cut it off anyway, is we're just going to spin up the front end. So you'll notice that on this one, it has API 3 adapters. There's no front end. On the one that's deploying right now, you'll see that there's no front end on here. We just have it on a repo where you can pull it down to your repo and it'll reference your config files, your deployed contracts already, and then build your front end from that information, right? So you don't have to fork it and manually do it. So we're going to go ahead and yarn front end cogen. If you're not using a Linux based type of system, so if you're not on a Mac or Linux, if you're on Windows not using WSL, this will not work. You'll have to do it manually, and that's why I'm using WSL. So let me go ahead and front end cogen, and then it's going to basically download the entire front end object, and you see that I have the Aave UI. And then that was it. And then right here, we're going to go ahead and yarn front end dev. That's going to download all the packages and spin it up. So let's go ahead and yarn in front end dev. And you'll notice I only have a few tokens that I'm going to be using for mine, because I only set in my adapters here on my config, I only have a couple tokens versus the S and the wrap SBT. So when we move on, I can add those tokens. You saw how I added them. I can just redeploy the whole thing over and over again. But it just, my front end or my project didn't work as I expected. So this was my backup just in case. So you'll see that is downloading the front end files, basically yarn installing all the stuff that we need for the front end package. And let's check on our back end. Let's see how our thing is going. He's still deploying. Again, I haven't been RPC called, so the RPC that I'm using that's public is working for us. But you'll see that is right here, stepping on the deploy UI helpers, and it's still moving along here on this other repo. And there we go. So now I have it started on port 3000 localhost. So let's go ahead and spin that up. Localhost 3000. And we're going to see this borrow lending dApp as soon as it loads up. Let's see when it's connected here. So let's go ahead and connect my wallet. And I restarted, so I have to do everything. There we go. And you see that I have my markets here. I have a USDC, mock API3, mock wrapped ETH, right? Basically the things that I set up on my initial configuration back here in this Aave CLI, right? Just the basics right here. The other one had the S and the other wrap BTC. And so now I have a borrow lending market. Let me make sure I'm on the right deployer. So I have these wallets already set up. So Aave deployer V2. There's no market, right? There's no bank without any money. So the bank has to initially provide some liquidity, right? Maybe you have a market maker, maybe you have some kind of partners that are going to deposit liquidity, because I have nothing to lend out if I can't borrow, right? So I'm going to go ahead and supply the bank with some money, right? I have $100 million in USDC because I minted it when I deployed my contract. So let's just pop in 10 million. And that way we're going to go ahead and approve it and deposit in the bank, right? Again, if there was a market for it and someone was borrowing it, I'd be earning yield. But as the original supplier, there is no yield to earn, right? That's the way the borrow lending works, right? If no one's borrowing it, there's no money to be made, right? It's not like the yield comes out of somewhere. That's why we incentivize people to deposit on there with points. They have the S points and everything to get people to do things in here. So now we know that the markets here in general have a total market size of $10 million, right? There's $10 million of theoretical USD that I can supply to the market to be borrowed, right? But again, we have certain reserves that we want to have. Those are the details of a borrow lending market. But let's say, we want to supply our API3 tokens as well, and we want to borrow that USDC. Let's say we're on another wallet, but I'm going to keep this simple and just do it on my wallet because all the tokens are here. I want to have, pop in 1 million API3 tokens, not one. Let me cancel that. Let's do 1 million. And then pop that in there and confirm. And again, this is all open source. You can modify the look to however you want. Again, I did like an AI agent hackathon that that showed, instead of theoretical stuff, it actually showed I can stop liquidations and perform, deposits on here. So like anybody that's using AI kind of stuff, I hate simulations. I hate things like show me on the blockchain that it works. So here you can actually show that it works, right? So now I have deposited my API3 on here. So I have my total balance of 10,620,000, and I can borrow that USDC, right? And I can just, maybe max borrow because that's my limitation. You see that my health factor is getting low. If I don't borrow as much, maybe say if I borrow 2 million, I have a pretty decent health factor, right? It's how much I have deposited versus how much I'm actually borrowing. Am I at risk at liquidation? No, I'm in pretty good risk. Even in crazy market falls, like what happened 2 days ago, you want to be safe, right? So I'm going to have that borrow USDC, and then I'm going to go ahead and load that up. And now we have a market, right? Now I'm borrowing some money. I owe a little bit of yield on there. So right now I have this $2 million of debt. I have this collateral. And then as we come in tomorrow, I mean, not tomorrow, the next workshop, I'll have another wallet kind of prepped on there where I have this deposit. I borrow it to the max, and I'm really close to liquidation. And then I show you how to actually liquidate something here. And that's kind of where I want to stop off today of, getting you used to getting this deployed, right? Getting your market set up, getting your front end set up, right? Every time you have an asset, it'll show you that you have your asset ready to go. You can see that your health factor is going on here, what your net worth is. You can check the markets if you want. So basically, this is a full-on working Aave V2 fork. Again, it's not ready for production because we use some adapters, we made some changes. So if you really want to take this to production and you want to deploy to Sonic, definitely get your audit in there. I can't recommend saying, hey, this is ready to go. Definitely make sure that everything you have working is good to rock. But it is a working function, great for test nets, great for experimenting and doing your own methodological liquidations, right? Becoming a searcher. Let's check on that back process here. And no, this is this one. Let me go to this one. Oh, it's done. It's complete, right? So this is the other one that we worked with. And so if we go down to the very, very bottom and we look at our deployed contracts from the original one before my WSL was working, and you'll see that I have all the contracts there. So you can see that the RPC that I used that was public is working on there, and you're ready to rock with this. So it's a different set of contracts, different set of tokens, right? We totally have so you can go crazy with the tokens. So one more thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about, and this is a very important thing, and as I restarted my machine, I noticed that my notes are closed when I had all these files open. Give me 1 second. Is if you are using a Windows and when you use Docker on here and you deploy something, there is a minor thing that you do have to adjust. And that is when we deploy with Docker, it creates something called the permissions with root, not the permission of your actual username, right? So this account doesn't have rights to this root directory until we give it to him. So like all this root directory files here, I can't run scripts or anything because this user account does not have permission. So what we have to do is run this code here, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it down, and so you guys can see it. And it's basically, we're going to allow our user to have access to this specific folder here. And so I'm going to go ahead and just change that over to my user account. 49358. Oops, I hit up arrow. Let me go back. And so what I'm going to do is I'm changing the user of just instead of just having root in order to do this. And then I have it to my Linux base, and this is called CLI demo 2. Demo, and then -2. And this is going to change the permissions for it. It has to be sudo. I have to override that. And now I'll be able to run scripts and run these specific scripts in order for it to run from this account, right? It's just one of those weird things when you do it from a WSL and then you do it from Docker, that the root overrides your user account because we are transferring everything over to the Docker image. And then it just, I struggle with that for a little bit. So if you are following along with the WSL interface, make sure to basically update that and just give permissions to that folder, to that account. So then that way it knows, hey, you can run the scripts, right? And so when I want to do different wallets, I have this thing called distribute, right? Because every time we deployed, it was on the deployer wallet. I want to distribute to other wallets. Maybe I want to distribute millions of tokens to 10 wallets, 5 wallets. So you can look at this distribute script and then look how I basically pull it in, you'll see that I'm looking at the API3 references and looking at the tokens there. And then I just have ABIs. You'll notice every script that I have, all the ABIs are in every script. Why didn't I make a global ABI one? Because it's not really for production, it's more for learning. So you know exactly what functions I'm calling, where I'm calling it from. So you can learn from the script specifically of, am I doing token interface? Am I doing the Aave interface? Everything. You can see that I'm building it from the mnemonic, and you can see exactly how I'm generating which mnemonic wallet, right? Position 0 versus position 1. And I can keep generating, nearly an infinite amount of wallets on the fly. So you can see how I'm generating each wallet to do distribute. So if you want to create a for loop on there and distribute all the different tokens, you absolutely can modify this to your needs on here. So basically, all the tokens are in one wallet. I want to distribute. So it's literally yarn and then the name of the script. So yarn distribute. And that will distribute all the files on here. So if we look at the package.json file, you'll see that we have tons and tons of different scripts that I'm going to take you through each part of it. So right now, all we've done is basically get to about distribute right here. So this front end build is basically all we've gotten to. So we got to this part, and then we're here. And I think I killed my access. I didn't type the name right because I think something's going on with my Linux distribution file, but I will fix that. But I just wanted to mention that on there. No need to like troubleshoot that. It's just a permission issue. But I wanted to show you that because as we go on into the next steps, we're going to go ahead and start using these scripts where we're going to deposit USDC. We're going to start simulating all these liquidations. So I wanted you to just have the access to that. So if you're using a WSL, make sure to add permissions to one of the names. I probably spelled it somewhere. But definitely make sure that you do that if you're following along on the video series. And I think that is it for today because we are at the hour, just a little bit over. And I think that's a good place to spot because now we're going to set up a position, talk about what positions, more details in the loan to value, and then actually liquidate someone when I change the Oracle to something that I can control on there.
Nice. Great job, man. Let me give you a applause. Seriously, that's I know how hard it is because I've done a few university sessions in the past, and just like even setting it up from multiple perspectives, from like an OPSEC perspective, and also from like a setup perspective, like lessons and everything. It's like it's not easy. So yeah, I think Billy did an amazing job. I think hopefully you guys got some good value out of this session, and then we'll obviously continue in the next ones. But super interesting stuff working Aave, and like basically like I think this series is going to be super valuable for any Web3 builder. Even if you don't end up using this stuff, it's just like in the periphery you can plug into when you're building your dApps. You know what you sort of get aware of what you have in terms of tools at your disposal. So super cool, and yeah, thanks so much, Billy. Any last words?
No, absolutely. Like again, hopefully you learned something on here. Again, this series was designed because nobody did it, and I wanted to learn it. And every time I went to go for a resource, they always stop like 10 feet in. I'm like, all right, we did a flash zone, tune in for next week, and it was never next week. So I'm just like waiting for daddy to bring milk home, and daddy didn't come. So I'm like, all right, let's complete this series. Let's learn how to do DeFi. DeFi is a skill that pays the bills in this space, man. If you know how to DeFi, you are valuable on here. So become valuable on here and understand how this works, and this will pay you tenfold as you understand as these new markets come out, as like stuff like Silo Finance comes up right there. Like they have V2 and how they have very similar markets where you can now, instead of being exposed to all the assets, you're exposed to single assets. So you can take a little bit more risk if you want to, like understanding those kind of things are going to help you in the space. And when the markets shift, that's where the money is, right? That's OEV. Yeah. 100%. Make money when people are losing it. So, yeah.
Yeah, especially in these times. Yeah. Yep. Cool. Okay, thanks so much. And yeah, you guys know this is an unscheduled one on Tuesday because unfortunately I missed the last one, but we'll continue on Fridays as much as possible with Billy and other builders in the Sonic ecosystem to spotlight what they're doing. And Billy's providing just a lot of value to the community. So he's been on a few times, and this is sort of a series we're gonna collate at the end and sort of have it sort of evergreen content from Billy and Api3. So thank you, Billy, and yeah, I'll see you guys hopefully on this Friday. If not, then the Fridays following for future Builders Hours. All right, take care. Thanks, guys.
See you guys.